I'll go ahead and finish your conversation, Ricky.
I was asking about Betty and Beanie.
Oh, were you? I saw my on the porch going home. Was it yesterday?
Said that sinus and allergies.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we get started, anybody want to update on some sick? I heard that.
We had a message about Aunt Mill. They thought she had a stroke. They had to carry her to the hospital, but it ended up being
UTI?
yeah.
Yeah, Kathy got that, and that can make you act very weird, if you want to put it that way. Yes.
My sister-in-law, Connie Mooney, like my brother's wife, she had a hip replacement a few weeks ago. She's been in rehab. She's been in Tupelo, Little Village, maybe coming home to Houston. Thought it might be next Friday. Not sure that it may be next Tuesday. Hopefully it will be.
Her name's Connie Mooney. Hip replacement.
She had a hip replacement, right hip replacement.
Yeah.
Had a stroke several years ago.
Well, that will set you back a little bit, I guarantee you. Somebody else.
Kevin, our son, and his family have gotten over COVID. The boys, I don't know if they really had it or not, but he did.
Yeah.
The kids are still under quarantine, and Craig probably is too.
It's going around again, folks. And most of the people it's hitting are fully vaccinated, so it don't stop you from getting it. And it don't stop you from spreading it. So, but it will maybe give you a milder case than you would have otherwise. So I'm not against vaccinations, but they don't completely work. Anyway, I had a very precise outline of what we're going to talk about tonight, and it's on my desk at home. But we'll make it. I was going to start the book of 1 Peter, but I'm not. I'm going to talk about Peter's return, or Peter's conversion, is what it's called in the Old King James, but we'll start with Luke chapter 22 and verse 31 and 32 to get us started. But I'm not going to go through 1 Peter or 2 Peter. I've been through 2 Peter a year or two ago when I went through especially chapter 1, the Christian virtues. But I want us to go to the book of Daniel. I mean, Terry's been mentioning that Daniel goes along well with Revelation. And so I want to teach Daniel on Sunday nights and get us started. But it's going to take me a while to get ready, so I'm going to give myself another week and do it next week. But I was preparing for 1 Peter, and so I just decided I'd go along and talk about what I was going to talk about Peter's background. And this tells us a lot about Peter here in chapter 22 of Luke. This is right after Jesus had instituted the Lord's Supper, and he still got the apostles around the table. And for some reason, he turns to Peter. Jesus turns to Peter and says, "Simon, Simon, indeed Satan has asked for you, and he will sift you as wheat. But I prayed for you that your faith should not fail, and when you have returned to me," Old King James says converted, when you're converted, "strengthen your brethren." And that's something that Jesus repeats very often to Peter. Feed your sheep, feed my sheep, strengthen your brethren, shepherd the flock. And Peter's just not getting the message early in his life. And he's very gung-ho about the work. And he said, No, Lord, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go to prison for you. I'll fight to the death for you. And he was willing to do that, but his idea of the kingdom was an earthly kingdom. He didn't understand the spiritual nature of the church yet. And, well, you back up when Jesus started this conversation in verse 25. He said, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and those who exercise authority over them are called benefactors. But not so among you. That's not what the king is about. Who's in charge or who's the boss. Not so among you. On the contrary, he who is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he who governs as he who serves. Who is greater? He that sits at the table or he who serves? Of course, it's he that sits at the table. But Jesus is saying, you got to learn how to serve others. And Peter had not learned that yet. He and Peter and John especially are competing with who's going to be the first on the left side and the right side of Jesus' kingdom. That's because they thought that Jesus was going to restore the nation of Israel again. But they didn't understand the nature of the kingdom. And so it says, when you turn back to me, then you remember these words. And Peter says, I'm not going to turn away from you. And that's when Jesus said, before this night is over, before the rooster crows in the morning, you'll deny me 3 times. And you keep reading, and that's exactly what he did. Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane. He was praying there. If it be possible, let this cup pass from me. And while he's praying, the crowd comes, or the guards come, and take him away. Of course, Judas betrayed him. They take him away. And having arrested him, verse 54, they led him and brought him into the high priest, but Peter followed at a distance. And when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat along them. And 3 times, first it was a servant girl, then it was some man, and then a little bit, an hour or so later, they came by and said, yeah, you were with Jesus. You were with Jesus. You are Galilean. I know you were with Jesus. And he finally just curses and said, I don't know the man. And Jesus was close enough, and Peter was close enough to see Jesus. And the Lord turned and looked at him, verse 61. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, before the rooster crows, you'll deny me 3 times. So Peter went out and wept bitterly. He was a tender-hearted man. He was gung-ho. He was hasty. And he would be a leader, but he's not one now. This is on a Thursday night before Jesus was crucified the next day. And they all forsake him when Jesus was crucified. We had the wrong idea about what Jesus' kingdom was all about. Let's go now to chapter 21. This is after the resurrection. Jesus is appearing to the disciples for the first time. Now, Peter had saw the empty tomb before this, but Jesus was cooking fish, actually, early in the morning on this day that they were out fishing and they hadn't caught anything all night. There were 4 or 5 disciples, Peter, James, and John, the sons of Zebedee, and Nathaniel, and some others were out fishing. And he said, the guy on the shore said, cast on the other side. Of course, they'd already cast on both sides. And they did, and when they tried to pull the net in, they couldn't get the net in. The net started tearing. There was 153 fish in that net. And that's when John said, that's the Lord. Chapter 21 of John. I'm just giving the background to where we're going to start reading in verse 15. And so they come in, and you ever had fish for breakfast? Roasted fish over the fire, barbecued fish. blackened, I guess what we would call it. But every time Kathy and I would go up to Red Cedar Hut on Thursday night when they had their fish special, we'd have enough left the next morning. We'd have fish for breakfast the next morning. So I'm not against fish for breakfast, fish and eggs. But they had fish for breakfast, and when they'd eaten, verse 15, breakfast, Jesus said to Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? And he compares him, more than these. Do you think you love me more than these other apostles, disciples? And Jesus said, you know I love you. Peter said. And he said, feed my lambs. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to start reading this from Brother Hugo McCord's translation of the Everlasting Gospel. There's two different words that's used in that passage. Two different words. There's three major words for love: agape, the supreme love, and there's phileo, which is brotherly love or love of admiration, a hero worship, looking up to somebody. And to distinguish between the two, Brother McCord translates filial love as like, and it reads clearer when you read it that way. So after they finished breakfast, Jesus asked Peter, Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? And Peter replied, yes, Lord, you know I like you. Gets clearer when you see the two different kinds of love there. Jesus said, feed my lambs. A second time he asked, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter repeated to him, Lord, you know I like you. Jesus said to him, shepherd my sheep. There's a different word than feed. It's tend, take care of them. And he does become a shepherd before it's over with, when he is converted, when he learns how to serve. A third time Jesus asked him, Simon, son of Jonah, do you like me? Now Jesus changed to filial love. Do you like me? And Peter, grieved that he asked him the third time, said, ask him, do you like me? The third time he replied, Lord, you know all things. You know I like you. It's a conversation about, in what way do you love me? Do you love me because you look up to me? You've seen me do all these miracles. I'm your hero. How do you think you ought to serve me? Paul said in Acts 17, about 30, I don't know what verse it was, but he said, God is not worshipped with men's hands as though he needed anything.